What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Supplement Copywriting channel. And in today's video, we're going to be going over how do you optimize an advertorial for higher conversions in 5 simple steps. Now, I'm breaking this up into 2 videos because I want it to be a little bit easier to digest and to implement. But in today's video, we're going to be discussing why do you even need to optimize an advertorial? What's the number one mistake that a lot of ecom and supplement companies make when they're trying to optimize an advertorial? Number 3, we're going to be looking at how to decide whether you should actually kill and entirely scrap an advertorial versus when you should move forward with trying to optimize the different elements. And then make sure that you stick around for this last point because it's where we're going to be digging into the actual individual elements and how to tweak them to get an advertorial converting at a much higher rate than it currently is right now. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of today's video. And the very first point is, well, why does an advertorial need to be optimized? Well, very rarely are you going to get one that cranks sales right out of the gates. Now, 1 out of 100 times, this might happen. But for the other 99% of the time, just like anything else that runs on cold traffic, we need to test and iterate because we're taking people from not knowing about a specific product all the way to getting them to pull out their credit card on the next page, not on the advertorial itself. So really, it's a game of putting out our best guess, then testing and iterating to get that advertorial to scale. And this is really similar to what we've spoken about a couple different times on this channel with mini VSLs or product pages, which is we need to drive traffic to the page, we need to get data on it, and then based off that data, we need to go and optimize specific elements that are the bottleneck there. And so this leads us to the number one mistake that a lot of ecom companies make when it comes to trying to optimize an advertorial. And that is they guess at what to change or they go off their gut feelings. And a lot of the times this is a bad idea because data is a way better gauge of what the true issue is as opposed to our gut feelings. The other problem that a lot of ecom companies and supplement companies run into is they see that something isn't quite where they want it to be. So they change way too many variables at once so they don't know what actually made a meaningful difference and caused it to scale. And that is a big issue too, because if you change 5 things in an advertorial and it ends up working, well, you have a 20% chance of guessing what it actually was, so that way when you move on to another advertorial, you can't carry that hypothesis and that split test over. So you need data to find the bottleneck is really what the biggest thing here is. It's not a gut feeling. It's none of that kind of stuff. It is you need data to find what the bottleneck is. And a lot of the times that bottleneck is going to be a few common elements that we're discussing in today's video. The next part that we need to think about is there's a lot of context when we're optimizing an advertorial that's already working versus one that isn't working. And so an advertorial that's already working requires different tweaks than one that's not working. Now, if the angle and core desire of the advertorial that's working is already proven and the structure of it, then usually the changes for an advertorial that is already doing decent is going to be made to the top third of the advertorial. Now, when some advertorials don't get any traction, a lot of the times it is better to start back at the drawing board because you want to at least have some traction. It doesn't mean that it needs to be scaling super hard or crushing it, but if it doesn't get any traction and all the hard and soft metrics on the advertorial are pretty bad, it's usually better to just go back to the drawing board and craft a new one because they are shorter and so much easier to write. And a lot of the times when you're starting over at square one and you need to rewrite an advertorial, which I know that nobody really wants to do, but sometimes it is a game of just not burning a bunch of cash on a loser, you usually need to do more research. You need to study what others in the same niche are doing, and you need to look at potentially using a different angle or core desire or type of advertorial and structure along with it. But that isn't the focus of today's video. So let's dive in and see what actually moves the needle on advertorials that are already working to get them scaling and converting at a much higher rate. Now, I put this first as a bonus just because it ties in really well with the whole idea of data. And that is put heat maps on your advertorial. And one of the reasons that I really like this is because, like I said above, data, not gut feelings, should really drive the decisions of what we're making. So when you put a heat map on an advertorial, it tracks how far down the page the reader falls off, where they click, all those kinds of things. And that allows you to pinpoint where the copy, the images, or the button, etc., needs to be changed. So it gives you a really clear idea of exactly where the clicks on the page are going. So maybe you need to adjust buttons on the page to match up with where people are already naturally clicking. It shows where the big drop-off point is in the traffic, where people stop reading the page. And that is, if you're running something like a listicle, maybe you need to rearrange the different reasons so that you have a much stronger reason right where the typical drop-off point is. If a lot of people aren't getting past the lead of like a personal story advertorial, you might need to tighten up that lead, make it shorter, punchier, a lot more attention grabbing. So using heat maps on an advertorial is an absolute must for anybody who's running them, because it just gives you such quality data of where the bottleneck is and what needs to be fixed. So usually the tech for this is going to be a few different programs. There's one named VWO, there's one named Clarity, and then another one named Hotjar. So you can use any one of these three options, but you want to have at least one of them on your page so you know where the clicks, where the drop off, and where people are going on the page that you need to be able to go ahead and fix. Now, the very first thing that we're going to be optimizing for an advertorial that's already working is we're going to be testing new headlines. A headline is the first thing that a person will see, so it needs to speak directly to their pain points and their desires. Headlines should always be clear, specific, and easy to understand, not clever. That's a big problem that I see a lot of people do in their headlines, is they try to be clever. If you look at some of the all-time winners when it comes to advertorials, they hit this criteria. They're clear, they're specific, they're easy to understand, and they imply some kind of benefit. They're not clever, because we're not trying to write a big bloated sales page like a lot of companies have done in the past. Advertorials are different in this way, where the clearness, the specificity, how easy to understand it is really does matter. You typically will have much longer headlines in a full-blown direct response sales page. And for advertorials, the headlines can sometimes get a little bit longer, but they're not going to be quite as hypey, because usually for an advertorial, unless it is a product forward style advertorial where you're letting them know fresh out of the gate, hey, I'm selling you something, you want it to be about 70% education and about 30% selling. So make sure that your headlines are really strong. And to make your headlines strong, what you're going to want to do, focus on pain points, desires, social proof, and authority when it applies. You're not going to, slap a doctor recommendation in every single headline. But if you have a product where it would make sense that a doctor would be an authority that people would pay attention to, whenever possible, use those kinds of things. And then the other part of this all is you want to test at least 2 to 3 headlines at a time. You don't want to test just one headline, because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So let's look at a couple different styles of headlines that you can play around with, and also some examples of those headlines that you can take, put in your swipe file, make to fit your product. Now, the very first one is going to be a very simple problem solution headline, and it's going to hit on the problem and then tease at the solution. So here's an example. This 65-year-old's knees were ruining his retirement, but he turned back the clock without surgery. And I'm actually going to have the hero image down below in another section so you can see what goes along with this. Next, we have why headlines. These are going to transition from an old solution to a new one. Why homeowners are turning off their expensive heating systems for this affordable and portable heater. Heats my ice cold office in 2 minutes. This is another big thing. Whenever you can include a quote, I would definitely do that. A lot of the times the quote will actually be pushed down into the subheadline. For certain advertorials, it's more appropriate to put in the headline. It really comes down to kind of the brand that you run and what you guys want to do. But, quotes like this are great to use in subheadlines. We have the how headline, and this is, how this one thing helped them go from struggling to success is really what the how headline is about. So here's an example: how I drifted off to sleep in minutes and woke up feeling energized thanks to this weird 2-inch patch. We have our social proof headlines. These are usually going to be, reviewing or telling their story about a product. Often it's going to be more of a story-based or personal story advertorial. Our lash growth serum's a scam. I tried 7 and wasted over $1,000 before finding one that works. So you're going to see here what we're doing is, they tried 7 different lash growth serums. They wasted over $1,000, and then they finally found one that worked. So anybody who is interested in lash growth serums or already believes they're kind of a scam is going to be interested to read that. We have listicle headlines. These are really pretty simple. You're going to give a certain number of reasons for a benefit or for switching to a new product. 8 reasons why over 2 million Americans have switched to Earth Breeze laundry detergent sheets. So that is by no means an exhaustive list of every kind of headline that you could come up with, but these are pretty tried and true ones. These are a lot of examples of ones that I've seen scale and perform very well on cold traffic for companies that are running advertorials. Now, number 2, we're going to be testing new hero images. And a hero image is the image that comes directly below the headline and before the lead, and you kind of get into some of the body copy and things like that. And a big mistake that a lot of companies make is they ignore the importance of the hero image that is right below the headline. But the right image that you have there can dramatically change how the advertorial performs on cold traffic, because it is the very first visual, almost like visual hook, that is going to capture their attention right below the headline. So it is still in that third top portion of the advertorial that we want to make sure that we're focusing on. Because more often than not, after you get past that first third of the advertorial, a lot of it is going to be pretty boilerplate. So that first third is really important for capturing, keeping the person's attention, driving a ton of curiosity, and then getting them into the actual position where they're reading the product introduction, where you're now introducing it as the solution to the problem that they're dealing with. And really, with the images, you want to make them look organic and real, not just stock images from like Stuttershock and things like that. So what you really want to do is, if you have to use a stock image, take it and give it to a designer and have them actually personalize it, change it, and tweak it. Because if the headline is strong, but then the hero image looks really chintzy and cheap, and it looks like something that would come from a stock image website, it's really not going to capture people's attention. And I believe now more than ever, visuals are very, very important when it comes to marketing. It's the reason why so many things are like TikTok and Instagram and all these more visual platforms are blowing up, is because a lot of the times the visuals do a great job of leaving an impression and really capturing and keeping our attention. So don't ignore the hero image on an advertorial that you're running. So here are 7 commonly used hero images that I see in a lot of advertorials, with some examples for you guys. The very first one is the product in use. You just show someone using the product. My physiotherapist recommended this to me and it fixed my shoulder pain. I only wish I knew about this sooner. You see the guy's picture of obviously his shoulder in pain and the issues, and then you see him wearing the shoulder sling. Next, we have the before state. This is typically going to highlight the problem and the pain before it has been fixed for them. Here you can see this guy obviously in leg pain. This pocket-sized therapy light provides near instant joint pain relief and turns back the clock on achy and swollen knees, hips, wrists, fingers, elbows, and feet in as little as 3 days. But the main thing here is this looks like a pretty organic picture. Then we have the after state, and this just shows the end result and the desire that the customer wants. So you'll recognize this headline: this 65-year-old's knees were ruining his retirement, but he turned back the clock without surgery. And you'll see him, it looks like a very organic picture. He's out playing golf. And then this is actually a personal story advertorial. And it goes on to tell how, after retirement, this guy was really looking forward to doing a bunch of golf because it's what he loves. But his knees were so bad that he wasn't actually able to get out and play golf. And so this is him obviously having a good time, the good old bro handshake out of Predator with a buddy of his. So this is the after state of him happy, in good health, knees feeling great. Then we have the transformation, and this is showing the before and the after state of the ideal customer. So that really are showing the transformation the person is going to make with this product. My doctor recommended this, and it made me sleep so much better. I only wish I knew about it sooner, from the same company as above. And this is her on this side here, obviously, struggling with sleep. And then this is her sleeping like a baby. And then there is the 2-inch patch right there in her arm. So we have our before state where she's in pain, obviously struggling with sleep. And then here getting some good old quality blissful sleep. Then we have the product, and essentially it's just showing someone with the product in their hand. This one is obviously for a binocular, so you can see him using the binoculars here. You can see what he sees, almost like you're looking through the binocular as them. And then we have a picture of the actual product right there. Now we have a story, and this is just showing a part of the story. This clever retiree minimized his knee pain by changing how he gets dressed every morning. And again, very organic looking picture, shows the person in a part of their story, obviously not really in pain, not really, at the end state of my knees feel so much better, but just living everyday life, showing a part of their story. And that is a good example of a story-based image. Next, we have the zoom in, and this shows the product and then has a bubble to tease at the science or how it works or something like that. And obviously, we can see someone grabbing their neck in obvious neck pain. And then we have the zoom in to show some of the science and tease the curiosity of this product and how it works. These are great. I see these working all the time for tons of different products. The zoom in is a phenomenal one to use if it applies to your product. So that is going to be this week's. And next week's part 2, we're going to be looking at leads, transitions, and testing new types of advertorials. So I hope this helps, guys. Like, if you take anything away from this, really just let it be. You want to make sure that you are not trying to optimize an advertorial that is kind of dead in the water, so you're not wasting any ad spend on something that isn't going to work. You want to ensure that you are basing all of the different decisions that you're making off of data. And then from there, look at things like your headline and your hero image, and then also next week leads. And then we're going to be looking at like the types of leads that you can use. So the lead might be doing all right, but you can switch it up and insert a new, shorter, punchier type of lead. And then from there, we're going to be looking at overall kind of like advertorial structures, because you might have a really good advertorial, but it might be in the wrong structure. So there's a few different things that you can tweak around there to make it actually convert significantly better. So hope this helped. If you guys have any questions or there's anything you would like to see me cover in upcoming videos, go ahead and drop a comment below, and I'd be more than happy to make videos to ensure that you guys are getting what you need out of this channel. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Adios.